As some of you know, James went down to Washington, D.C. a while back with members of the Entertainment Consumer Association to sit down with senators and congressfolk and talk about how to responsibly address the issue of piracy. The trip was eye-opening and really gave us a lot to think about. So today we're going to do something a little different from our usual thing. Every time we do an episode on a political issue, a lot of you write in and tell us how disenfranchised you feel. How you feel like you just don't have any power to change these things, that your vote doesn't matter. You want to do something, but you seem to hit a brick wall just looking for a place to start. Well, if SOPA and PIPA showed us anything, it's that our voices actually do matter. I mean, what was thought to be a totally safe bill became a political firestorm. You guys made the unthinkable happen in Washington. People taking their names off a bill and voting against the wishes of major lobbyists and donors. But on the other side of that, bills like CISPA have proven that legislation like this doesn't die easy, and that we have plenty of battles left ahead of us. So we thought we'd spend this week making a handy guide for all you guys who want to get more involved in making things better but have no idea how to start. Because if going down to DC taught us anything, it's that we can really make a difference. It showed us that the halls of power are much more accessible than we'd long thought. American politics is made out to be a giant monolithic structure, cryptic and impenetrable, but it's really not as much as you would think. At the end of the day, it's just people. People like you and me, talking. To all our international viewers, I apologize if this episode doesn't have a lot of directly applicable information for you. But as citizens of the US, if an entire generation feels as though they are powerless in their own country, then the great experiment has failed, and we've failed, both as lovers of a medium which is still haunted by the specter of censorship, and greater lovers of liberty in general. As Thomas Paine famously said, those who expect to reap the blessings of freedom must, like men, undergo the fatigues of supporting it. When he spoke, he was talking about bearing arms. Today, all we gotta do is step a little outside our comfort zone, and all it takes to do it is a little information, so here goes. First, and most importantly, register to vote. I know everybody tells you this, but it actually does matter. With the gerrymandering that's gone on, most elections in the US are won by only a few percentage points. In fact, the results of every presidential election in the 20th century, with maybe 3 exceptions, could have been altered if all those who'd been registered to vote actually had voted. And every single presidential election in the 20th century could have been swung by the vast unregistered masses. So your vote matters, just go do it. Go get your friends to do it. And if you don't, well, don't complain when games or student loans or anything else that's important to you comes under attack. As a great Canadian once explained it, it's a lot like voting for pizza toppings among your friends. If you can't be bothered to vote, don't complain if you get stuck eating anchovies. Second, know your primaries. If it feels like your vote doesn't carry enough weight in the general election, then make sure you get out to your state primary. We've heard about the primaries a lot this year in terms of presidential candidates, but almost every elected office in your state has a primary. There's a primary for your congresspeople, your senators, even your governor. The question of who will and won't be running for major offices is often decided by less than 100,000 total votes, and it's not uncommon for the vote difference between 2 top-tier candidates in those sort of primaries to be numbered in the thousands. Beyond that, state offices and local offices, things which really directly affect your life where you're living, tend to be decided by a mere handful of votes. James recently spoke at the University of Miami, Ohio. If every student in that school was registered to vote in their district and actually came out to vote, they could have swung every primary in their district, except the nomination of Speaker of the House, John Boehner, and that only by a few thousand. My point is, these elections tend to be a lot more neck and neck than you think, so a handful of extra people deciding to make time to register and vote actually can make all the difference. Next, reach out to your congresspeople. James's trip to DC taught us that they're a lot more accessible than you might expect. In fact, a lot of them actually want to hear from you. And to show just how accessible they are, here's Jared Polis, sitting congressman from Colorado. When he heard we were planning this episode, he volunteered to come on and talk about how people can get involved. Oh, and if you didn't know already, this guy is pretty awesome. Not only did he ardently oppose SOPA and PIPA, but he actually jumped on the League of Legends message boards to explain the situation to the community there and rally their support. You don't get much more accessible than that. Oh, and he plays Anivia and Maokai, for those who are going to ask. Anyway, take it away, sir.
Hi everyone. The Extra Credit folks have already introduced me a bunch, but I'm Jared Polis, Congressman for the 2nd Congressional District of Colorado. Like many people under 40, games are a part of my life, so I wish I could come on this show and just talk about games, particularly League of Legends or Diablo 3, which I just completed, but today's about making your voice heard, and how you can most effectively reach people in Congress. First, your calls and emails do count. Members of Congress might not get to read or hear every one personally, but their staffs keep track and keep each member up to date about how many people contact them for or against each issue. As we saw during the debate over SOPA and PIPA, a flood of calls and emails can tip the scales. So send that email. Make that call. Just don't send snail mail because security irradiates it and sometimes doesn't get here for weeks, and when it does, it's frequently mangled. Second, make sure you're contacting your own member of Congress. If you're writing to someone who isn't your congressperson or senator, at best they'll forward the email or letter to the person who does represent you. At worst, they won't even read it. A quick Google search like Write Our Representative will lead you to a site where you can find your representative so you can write the right people. Third, it has to be personal. Internet petitions are great and all, but they come along too often, and they're too easy to fake. Members of Congress don't even know if the people who sign them are from their district. If you want Congress to listen, let a congressperson or senator know that you're from the district, you vote, and you'll be watching how they vote on your particular issue. Fourth, voting on bills is only a small part of being in Congress. Much of the work that we do is back home in our communities, where congresspeople and senators hold public events like town halls. Yes, you can actually speak to a member of Congress in person. They're actually quite accessible. Call their office and find out when they're holding a town hall, and simply show up and ask your question. You can even call to set up an appointment for you and your friends to meet with your member of Congress in their district office. Finally, if you want to get even more engaged, call your mayor's office and ask about participating on local advisory boards, which are a great way to influence local government. You can also volunteer for a campaign or even run for office yourself. Yes, run for office yourself. It's not as crazy as it sounds. I got started in politics because I care deeply about education, so I ran for the state school board. There's hundreds of important issues that can be impacted on the local level, whether you want to run for library board or fire district board. So give it a shot. This is something you can actually do. In short, make contact, make it local, personal, thoughtful, and your voice will be heard. All right, everyone, it was a blast to be on the show, but I've got to get back to my day job. I hope that helps, and I hope that you make your voices heard.
Thanks, Jared, and thanks to all you guys as well. I know this wasn't our typical gaming episode, but if we're really going to make a difference, if we're really going to preserve a free and open internet, if we are going to keep games an uncensored art, it's necessary that as many of us are heard as possible. See you next week.